Welcome to this episode of our program Daily Debate. As usual, we will be discussing an important debate. Today we'll be speaking about the COP27. We are just a few days ahead of this much anticipated summit. The 27th United Nations Conference of Parties, COP27, will be hosted at the Red Sea resort of Sharm el-Sheikh from the 6th to the 18th this year. COP27 comes at a very critical time where the world is seeing a global pandemic, high energy prices, the war in Ukraine, major disruptions of food supply and many other chains, and hence came the importance of such an important summit. As host of the COP27, Egypt finds itself on the world stage, leading the voice of the global, or rather for the global South, especially Africa, and looks to the summit as an opportunity to emphasize its Afro-Arab identity, the position of Cairo as a bridge between the global South and North. Egypt has always represented the African point of view in different fora, as the UN General Assembly, the Munich Security Conference, G7 Summit in France, the G20 Osaka Summit, the Tokyo International Conference on African Development, Russia Africa Summit, and the UK Africa Summit. The Secretary General of the UN has emphasized this very important conference, saying that it's a struggle for life or death, the life of today, and the survival for tomorrow. He said that this is the time to take very important decisions, collaborate together in order to be able to confront this upcoming future, particularly of what concerns the climate change. Today we'll be speaking about that in our episode with our very distinguished guest, Engineer Salah Hafez, former Chief Executive Officer of the Egyptian Environmental Affairs Agency. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
The pleasure is all ours. Before we delve into our discussion, let me first have the top stories of the day. And President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi received on Thursday Vice President of the United Arab Emirates and its Prime Minister ruler of Dubai, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, at Al Ittihadiyya Presidential Palace. President Sisi expressed appreciation for the United Arab Emirates Vice President's supportive efforts for Egypt and asserted keenness on enhancing bilateral relations during the coming period. On his spot, Maktoum thanked the President for his generous welcome and praised Egypt's vital role in boosting the regional issues. He also hailed the Egyptian leadership on both the local and international levels. Worth to say that Egypt is celebrating 50th anniversary of Egyptian United Arab Emirates diplomatic relations. And to our next top story of the day, in Egypt clinched a $3 billion loan deal with the International Monetary Fund on Thursday, conditioned on a currency depreciation and state subsidy cuts. Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli said Egypt had reached the agreement with an IMF mission on a comprehensive economic reform program after tremendous efforts during the round of talks. During a joint press conference with the IMF delegation visiting Egypt, Madbouli said that the loan program is scheduled to run for 4 years and is due to be sent to the IMF Board of Directors for approval in December. He added that Egypt had also received an additional $5 billion from regional and international organizations without specifying which. On its part, the IMF said the staff-level agreement on the comprehensive economic policies and reforms would be supported by a 46-month extended fund facility arrangement of $3 billion. The Prime Minister said that the government's program, boosted by the IMF, aims at protecting Egypt's economic stability and consolidating the social security network, in addition to providing work opportunities through the private sector. And moving on to our topic of tonight, and before we delve into our discussion, let me first have this quick look on the report. And President Sisi looks forward to seeing real change from COP27. Let's watch.
President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi said that the peoples around the globe are waiting for tangible results from the upcoming World Climate Summit, the COP27. President el-Sisi was speaking to the virtual leader-level meeting of the Major Economist Forum on Energy and Climate, MEF, hosted by U.S. President Joe Biden. He said that the nations are looking for a real change that turns negotiations and pledges into actual steps at all levels to put into force the targets of the Paris Agreement, especially the goal to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels. The head of state said that Egypt's hosting to the COP27 provides an opportunity to reaffirm our commitment to enhancing efforts to confront climate change and adapt to its negative impact, and to build on the international momentum and the available political will by all parties for this purpose. He stressed that Egypt is fully aware of the responsibility entrusted to it as the COP27 president, and is aware that the peoples around the world are looking forward to tangible results that contribute to bringing about real change on the ground that helps move them from the stage of negotiating texts and announcing pledges to the stage of practical implementation on all levels to attain the goals of the Paris Agreement, which aims to limit global warming to well below 2, preferably to 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels. He added that they will continue to make every effort to urge all parties to cherish the ambition of their climate action by reviewing and updating their national contributions to the implementation of the Paris Agreement and supporting their long-term plans and strategies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and deal with the negative impacts of climate change. Cairo has recently launched the National Climate Change Strategy 2050 and is currently finalizing its updated national contributions, which will include specific, ambitious, and quantitative goals in key sectors to reflect efforts made by Egypt to achieve a fair transition towards a green economy and renewable energy in an appropriate manner that paves the way for turning Egypt into a regional energy hub. The president, however, noted that despite the government's key role in the global effort to confront climate change, this serious challenge has exceeded their ability to act alone. He revealed that during its COP27 chairmanship, Egypt will work to keep pace with all voices, visions, and trends, and to establish real partnerships between governments and non-governmental actors, including financial institutions and international and civil society organizations, to promote the current climate initiatives, follow up on the implementation of their results, and launch ambitious new initiatives to complement and support government climate action. President el-Sisi announced that Egypt has joined the Global Methane Pledge, the first ever heads of state global commitment to cut methane emissions at a level consistent with a 1.5 degrees Celsius, through which Egypt will enhance efforts to reduce methane emissions from the petroleum and natural gas sector, benefiting from the expertise and funding provided by the initiative and in cooperation with international partners in this sector. He asserted the necessity of all parties from developing countries, particularly in Africa, to feel that their top priorities are taken into consideration and that they bear shared responsibilities commensurate with their capabilities, with the appropriate support and funding available. The Egyptian leader concluded that the COP27 success is closely related to the satisfaction of developing countries and the decisive steps taken by developed countries to fulfill their pledges to enhance all-out efforts to combat climate change.
Right, welcome back, and let me again welcome our guest, Engineer Salah Hafez, former Chief Executive Officer of the Egyptian Environmental Affairs Agency. Again, thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
The COP27. And the COP27 is the next meeting for the group of countries who have already signed the UN Framework Convention for the climate change. But this year is very different. This is a very important summit taking place this year. How do you view its importance?
Well, there was the Paris Convention. This was a triggering issue that made the whole world cognizant of the fact that we have a big problem and you have to deal with it. So, but since then, they're all giving pledges and not living up to what they pledged for. And more importantly, in the last convention in Glasgow, they talked about the methane, which is the worst greenhouse gas, the commission, and very interesting, the net zero emission, not zero emission. They were talking about zero emission, but then the net, in order for them to reach the target of 1.5 degrees Celsius by 2050, they want the carbon dioxide in the air to stabilize. And to do so, there's emission, and then sinks that take the emission back, like the forests and the oceans, and because of the photosynthesis. And to introduce new science for it to make the removal of carbon dioxide more readily available. So this was a very important approach, and they worked very hard towards this. And many countries, especially the European Union, they made the plan and the strategy for a net zero emission. All pledges, as I said, like putting forward $100 billion for the developing country to spend on adaptation and mitigation. Adaptation is very important for the developing countries, and mitigation is important for everybody, for all the countries in the world. But the adaptation is what the developing country in particular suffer from, and incur lots of expenses to coexist with the changes that occur to the climate. So and the war in Russia broke out. Energy, they went back to the coal. When they pledged that they will phase out of coal completely, some countries, they had to go back to coal because of the sanctions on some countries. So it went haywire completely. And they were approaching, doing fairly well towards achieving the target of Paris, and then they deviated right, left, and center. And now they have to reconsider many things, and they change in this the pledges and the promises into implementation.
You pinpointed your finger on the most important issue, which is pledges that were made, $100 billion, because as the UN Secretary General said, it's
and they never
a life
raised.
struggle. It's a life or death struggle we're speaking about.
And moreover, because of the inflation that took place, you know, the developing countries became more in debt. So to pay the debts or to adapt with the changes, and the money was not made available. So we are, some developing countries, including us, because of the mere size of the population and the location, we're suffering great big deal.
Indeed. So we're speaking here about two issues. I mean, when those pledges were made, they were made last year in Glasgow.
Yeah.
And that was just before the Russia-Ukraine war, but it came right after 2 years of the coronavirus pandemic, which has hardly hit the world economy as well. So we're speaking here about collaboration, the need of collaboration. And this is what the key points that Egypt has put in order to find a way for collaborating with partners, with world partners, in order to come out with real results. How do we need to deal with that?
Well, collaboration is essential, but when there is two-sided war, then the geopolitics takes very important role in selecting what to do and rejecting what they don't want to do. Like what's happening in Saudi Arabia when they reduced the production, their production, and this was very bad hit for the American economy, so they increased the interest on the dollar, so they attracted the dollar to go back to the States for the balance and released strategic petroleum from strategic reserves and took some measures and imposed some sanctions on countries that were behind the reason of doing so.
But those
so
were,
collaboration,
as said by Saudi Arabia, were a must-do
yes.
economic decisions. And it's not just Saudi Arabia, by the way, who's running the OPEC.
Yeah.
But anyway,
it's
yes,
OPEC Plus.
yes, indeed.
And Russia and the States, they took it. So the collaboration in normal cases, when countries are friendly together, is very effective, but otherwise it's very selective.
Right, we go back to COP27,
Okay.
And the Egyptian COP27 presidency has already defined the summit 4 key goals, as you said, respectively: mitigation, adaptation, finance, and collaboration. And we need to understand each and why the choice of those 4 key factors in this as the key goals.
Well, of course, mitigation is the main target. The only way for the temperature to stabilize at certain temperature is to mitigate the effect, the cause. The cause is to reduce the emission, either to reduce emission or to reduce emission and remove the extra to speed up the process, the extra carbon dioxide in the air. There are many ways of doing it. Some ways are still being developed. And so this is the mitigation. The adaptation is the suffering. The system is disturbed, the natural system. It takes years and centuries if there is a change to stabilize again. But the rate of changes that are occurring all the time, the temperature and the gales and the biodiversity is the erosion of the coast, the sea level rise, in a very short period it will take years and years to stabilize. They want to adapt with the changes without, and this is very costly. This is very costly to adapt, like the erosion of our beaches now, not the beaches, the coastline, is causing a lot of problem. And the desertification or the land degradation because of the temperature, and the crops are not they're not developing in the same environment as before. So new technologies have to be introduced. So the adaptation is essential for the developing country. So this is why they pledged to offer, to put forward 100 billion, and they never did. So this is the adaptation. The finance is, of course, the name of the game, because you cannot do any of that without the finance. And collaboration mainly you have to exchange expertise and experience and data. The collaboration, because you cannot work separately. You know, they have to work in groups and exchange ideas and exchange research, R&D. And so this way, there will be synergy for achieving the targets. So the four corners are very well conceived and very well selected.
Indeed. When we speak about mitigation, and the UN is urging the world industrialized nations to lead an example by taking bold and immediate actions. This is the least that they can do, at least, to start with. How do you view such a call, and how can this be done at the backdrop of the circumstances, the issue of the war, lack of energy, and all this?
Well, here the NGOs and the public, they have to take part in the pressure groups. Because they can they can put really pressure in the media, and because it's not a fake problem. It's the detrimental problem to planet Earth. So there is no two ways about it. So, but geopolitics and economy, usually, like the oil companies. The oil companies now, they're thriving on just producing oil and selling oil. They promise not to invest in logistics of fossil fuel. Look at the LNG. The states, they're building LNG. They want to take the part of because of the shale gas. They have a lot of shale gas, so they want to market in Europe. And Russia is pulling out involuntarily, but because of the war. So the politics and economy and the strength of the groups that manage those issues, they make it very difficult for any promises or pressure to be fulfilled unless they make compromises.
Mm-hmm. Before we continue on with our discussion, let me first here have the second report. And President Sisi receives ministers participating in the 24th ministerial meeting of the GECF. This very important meeting that just took place a few days ago.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi received on Tuesday ministers participating in the 24th ministerial meeting of the gas exporting CEF, which is currently in session in Cairo in the presence of Petroleum Minister Tariq al-Mullah. Presidential spokesman Ambassador Bassam Radi said that President al-Sisi asserted on the importance of the role played by the gas exporting countries forum, the GECF, in the energy sector at the regional and international level. The President affirmed the necessity of intensifying efforts and cooperation in all related events to make the most of natural gas, looking forward to the participation of all the forum's members in the UN Climate Conference, the COP27, to shed light on natural gas's ability in achieving the balance between nations' prosperity and preserving the environment. International governmental organization headquartered in Doha, the capital of Qatar. The GECF comprises of 19 member countries, with Algeria, Bolivia, Egypt, Equatorial Guinea, Iran, Libya, Nigeria, Qatar, Russia, Trinidad and Tobago, and Venezuela as members, and Angola, Azerbaijan, Iraq, Malaysia, Mozambique, Norway, Peru, and the United Arab Emirates as observers. Together, they represent 72% of the global proven natural gas reserves, 43% of marketed production, 55% of exports by pipeline, and 50% of LNG exports.
Right, welcome back. And in fact, Egypt Egypt has given an example for the whole world, despite its limited resources and its limited financial status. But Egypt has begun with the LNG, with the green hydrogen. Those are the future, right? Please illustrate.
Indeed. Well, Egypt is dependent on the fossil fuel in exploration, the upstream of the fossil fuel. So they realize that they have to not to apologize for growing in this area, but to do something to alleviate the negative impact that we're doing, like discovering gases and exporting gases, working on the fossil fuel, because we cannot do without it.
Yes, indeed.
For the energy we need inside and for the economics of it. So we went to the green hydrogen. Green hydrogen is a genius approach. It has been known for a long time. But the beauty of it is it's renewable energy, and the green hydrogen is a carrier that you can take it all the way to the downstream. So the midstream here is categorically solved. There are some blemishes in the system that will require some scientific research and safety measures, which is very important. But we went full speed in this direction, and we went to the renewable energy and promised to have, by the year 2035, 42% renewable energy. This is a very, very big challenge. And with the green hydrogen, it made Egypt located in a very special situation for having done that and still doing along those lines. So this is one thing related to energy. So we were short of energy. Now we were short of fossil fuel and gas. Now we have more gas that we export and make money out of, but not enough because our local consumption is very high. And the green hydrogen that will replace the decarbonize many of the activities that we're doing.
Yes. Of course, plus the wind and solar that we are trying hard.
Yeah, the wind and solar on their own, and the wind and solar to produce green hydrogen.
Indeed, indeed.
And so the energy is transferred to the hydrogen, and then you move the hydrogen and then put it in a fuel cell, then you get electricity. But very difficult to get the wind into electricity without infrastructure and without storages, logistics, and the batteries are very expensive and being developed. But the hydrogen is easy like gas. It's gas. They capture it and put it in vessels or tanks and move it, and then they can produce electricity, logistics, cars, in the cars, eventually in some of in the airplane. The use which is consuming a lot of fossil fuel, of course. So this trend will be the future.
Indeed. Another thing that can be a future would be the water mechanism that can in which we can take from some dynamics. I don't understand the dynamics exactly of how to extract electricity out of water, but this is a very important issue.
Yeah.
But we'll leave it for a whole episode, because I know that it would take too much time to explain. But back to what we were speaking about, and 5 key issues that we have to watch during this summit: nature, food, water, industry, decarbonization. That is for climate adaptation. How do you view the importance of those 5 factors, and how should we be dealing with? And you can also speak about out-of-the-box solutions.
Well, of course, the green hydrogen is a factor, a very important factor. But the decarbonization, for instance, we have to think of a net zero emission. That we introduce the technology needed to remove, to make, because decarbonization, we have sinks and emitters. Sinks, like the sea, because of the algae and the photosynthesis, so they absorb the carbon dioxide. The forests, because again, the photosynthesis and the carbon dioxide is part of the system of the photosynthesis. And the land, the agriculture, because storages can be in the soil storages. Some is easy, and the farming, the green also is important in storing the energy, but it's a bit more expensive than the forests and the sea. The sea, they can introduce chemicals that will help absorb so all these, the technology is not fully developed in some parts, but it's fairly well developed, and we have it, but it costs money. And the problem is money. And our problem with money, that because of the corona, and we wanted to develop the country at the same time, we had to be deep in debt. So in debt, and the developing countries, they didn't made the money available and the funds available, and yet we have to repay the loan. So, but the decarbonization and all these things are very important and well-conceived system, and we have to have a roadmap for this, because Egypt is a very important part in Africa and the geographic location.
And speaking on behalf of Africa, Egypt has always spoken about on behalf of Africa and all forests worldwide. I think we have to remind our partners that we cannot all the time pay the price for what we didn't do. We did not do the pandemic, we did not spread it, we did not start a war. We never did.
Yeah.
And we were never.
But always vulnerable to things like that. And there are some powers that ignite things like that to reorganize.
Hopefully peace would prevail. And unfortunately, my time is out. I have to end it here. Engineer Salah Hafez, former Chief Executive Officer of the Egyptian Environmental Affairs Agency. We thank you so much for being with us and
You're
for
welcome.
your important input.
Thank you.
Thank you. And dear viewers, many thanks for watching. Next debate would be on Sunday, so enjoy this weekend, and good night.